It has been just over a month since Jurassic World Rebirth had released in theaters, and of course it's doing well, so I think that we all pretty much assumed that it's going to be getting a sequel, which probably went without saying, because this franchise has always done well and it's always gotten sequels. But now the question can be asked, where do we go from here? What kind of groundbreaking story can we tell in the next installment in the Jurassic franchise? So that's why I want to discuss. I want to discuss where it's likely that we'll go and where I'd like us to go. So let's get right into it. Now, obviously, the days of Fallen Kingdom are long behind us. And what I mean by that is the ending of Fallen Kingdom, where the dinosaurs had been released everywhere and they had been transported all over the place because a lot of them were sold. The genetic power is in a lot of different hands. So there was a lot of dinosaurs being introduced into the wild and whatnot. You had dinosaurs everywhere. You had a lot of very interesting story potential. You had a lot of potential to tell how, like, dinosaurs are affecting different ecosystems and how they're affecting, like, even just normal day-to-day life. And we got some stories told with that idea, like Battle at Big Rock and currently Chaos Theory. But Dominion could have been like the biggest story with that. And obviously, you know, there were some really cool aspects in Dominion, such as the Malta scene, the black market, which showcased how humans are reacting to dinosaurs, or the fact that a lot of people are illegally breeding them, like the whole herd of ceratopsians and whatnot. So we did get some aspects of that, but I don't think it was fleshed out nearly enough, especially things like the environmental impact. Because, like, obviously, invasive species are a huge issue for ecosystems. But if you have invasive species like dinosaurs, then you're going to have a bigger issue for local ecosystems. But that's not really something that they dove into. Instead, the movie kind of ended on a hopeful note saying we can coexist. And they didn't really do enough with the environmental impact of dinosaurs. You know, I think there could have been a bigger problem and bigger stories that were told with that. And then obviously we get to Rebirth, where they drop the concept entirely and they make it so that dinosaurs can't survive anywhere except for the equator. So now we're basically localized back to islands, which is a little bit frustrating because one problem that Fallen Kingdom solved was that you didn't have to have a reason to go back to the islands anymore. That was one of the biggest critiques of the Jurassic franchise, is like, you know, how many excuses can you give them to go back to the islands? Like, eventually you're just going to run out of excuses and it's going to feel forced. With dinosaurs around the world, you didn't need an excuse because the dinosaurs came to you. No matter where you went, there was a dinosaur and there was a different story that could be told. You could tell a story in the Rocky Mountains of just like a group of rangers who have to deal with just dinosaur issues in their park, you know, to try to protect guests or something like that. But now we're back to square one with humans having to go back to the islands just to get some really cool dinosaur things. And that's probably where we're going to be sticking for the foreseeable future, because now they've established in universe that these dinosaurs apparently, even though they've been doing okay for years before Rebirth took place, but we've established that they can't make it anywhere else. So what can we see? There's a good chance that we could see Isle St. Hubert again. Obviously, the home of the D-Rex and the Mutadons. The D-Rex did not get into a knockdown, drag-out fight at the end of its movie, which is great. You know, I don't think that we always need to do something like that. And it also did not die at the end of its movie, so it could potentially come back for future films. And that's one thing that we probably should see, because I think that the D-Rex is something that could be fleshed out a little bit more. It's certainly an interesting concept. You know, it could potentially represent how far genetic power can realistically go. And how much it can affect a single organism. Like, obviously, one of their biggest talking points leading up to this film was that they wanted you to feel like the D-Rex was in pain. I didn't really get that impression, at least not the pain part. I did, you know, especially after rewatching, I do certainly get the impression that it's more so like a curious animal, which is good. You know, that's a good take for it to portray it more so like an animal rather than a monster. But I think that the pain element could have added that extra layer to it and really show how far InGen had gone with a lot of their experiments. So potentially seeing the D-Rex again and having like that a little bit more fleshed out, I think would overall be a huge positive for the future of the franchise. And ultimately, it could make the animal a little bit more interesting. Even though I am a little bit tired of that aspect of the Jurassic franchise, you know, hybrids and mutants and things like that. It could work if it's done properly. Another thing I would like to see, and this is very specific, is Dunkleosteus. Dunkleosteus was pretty much teased in Jurassic World Rebirth. Well, I don't know if it was teased per se. It was just kind of shown. It was, you know, we had a Dunkleosteus head. It was the biggest fish among the other fish. That was really cool, and it had a very good design. Now, Dunkleosteus is a type of placoderm fish that lived in the Devonian before the dinosaurs. It's interesting that somebody apparently cloned it, and that it seemingly exists out there in the wild. That's very cool, and I feel like there are some stories you can tell with that. Maybe a story that's a little bit more aquatic focused, like maybe this is where you can also introduce the megalodon, as that was kind of teased with the giant megalodon jaw. You could potentially just say that there's a megalodon out there, and then you could try your hand at a megalodon representation, but you can also just have Dunkleosteus there too. And especially if it looks like how it did in Rebirth, then I think it would look pretty cool, and it would be pretty terrifying because of course Dunkleosteus is a very terrifying fish. It has these huge like jaws that are just very sharp. Like it doesn't actually have teeth. Those sharp things right there, those shears, those are actually just extensions of its jaw, and they constantly sharpen each other when it opens and closes its mouth. Imagine seeing something like that just coming after somebody, and imagine the kind of like interesting kills that you could have on screen, and the interesting story dynamics I suppose you can have. One big thing I absolutely want is a continuation of what they did in Rebirth, and that's treating these dinosaurs like animals. Like my mind immediately goes to the T-Rex raft scene. I loved how the T-Rex was portrayed in that scene. It was very animal-like. It seemed like it was more so curious more than anything. Like it did, I've mentioned this several times, but when it first saw the raft, it just stared at them a little bit, kind of like dropped its head, and it's like looking at them like, what are these things? It didn't start roaring right away. It didn't just charge full blast and just try to annihilate them immediately. It was really curious at first, and then it kind of seemed like it was just kind of playing with them as well, because of course it did already have a meal. It was just sleeping after a likely heavy meal, and so it likely wasn't too hungry. It just seemed like it was an animal playing with these weird new things that showed up. More of that. I would really love to see more of that. That was a huge highlight for the film, and I would love to see it in future installments. And other than that, I don't really know what else we can do, because now, like, what other reason could we have to go back to the islands? Like, obviously, we came up with this idea that you needed DNA from the 3 largest dinosaurs. You needed DNA from like 3 large animals to help create help advance medicine. What else can we do unless we're following different people? Like, I don't know if we're gonna keep the whole main character thing that we did from the Jurassic World trilogy. Like, are we gonna always follow Scarlett Johansson into these movies, or Mahershala Ali? Or are we going to get different casts of characters in each film, which would probably be a little bit too much. Following main characters is probably the safest route, because you don't have to reintroduce new people every time. But what would they want to do? Why would they want to go back to the island? And that's why I'm not a fan of condensing it the way that we condensed it. I don't think that we should have backtracked. I think we should have stuck with what Fallen Kingdom had set up, and told different stories, like a different flavor each movie you saw. That's one of the reasons why I loved Chaos Theory, or still do love Chaos Theory, is you're all over the world, and there's different environments, and you get to see different animals in those different environments, and you get unique situations out of those different animals in different environments. And it would have been really cool to see more of that on the big screen, but we're just kind of like back to square one in that department, and it's a little bit frustrating, I'm not gonna lie. So I don't know. That's like the most likely scenario in my head, is that we're simply just going to be going back to Isle St. Hubert, simply because, it feels like they wanted to do more with the D-Rex. And the D-Rex is alive, so there is potential to flesh it out a little bit more. But, there's gonna be a few, like, hurdles that are going to have to jump over to try to figure out how to get people back to those islands, or that island rather, and what kind of different stories you can tell at that point on. I don't know. What do you guys think? What would you like to see from the future of this franchise? Be sure to let me know down below. But me personally, like, all I can really see is them going in that little direction, is that we're just back to Isle St. Hubert, and we're just going to see a little bit more of that. That's the most likely scenario, because they kind of wrote themselves in a corner here with the fact that apparently dinosaurs can't survive anywhere except for the equator. So that's where we are with the franchise. Very limiting, especially after we had unlimited potential after the ending of Fallen Kingdom. But hey, it is what it is. Maybe we can get some awesome stories out of it. You just need the correct writer, the correct team of creatives, and you could get some pretty good stories out of that. But yeah, be sure to let me know what you guys think. And that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an awesome day.